Winter Roses, Autumn by Fairytalelovr. Chapter 29. Ella went into the solar and pursed her lips in displeasure. Tightening the robe around herself, she approached her brooding husband as he stood on the balcony, shivering as the chilly wind hit her thin clothes. "You have to stop worrying so much, love." Ned sighed, pulled her closer, and hugged her tightly.
"That is easier said than done. I wish you would go north with the children already."
"I told you. I reluctantly agreed to go north and leave you behind because, and only because, of the children. I am very unhappy and very inclined to club you on the head and have Jory carry you into the ship with us."
He chuckled. "He wouldn't dare."
"Well, that's too bad we'll never find out, isn't it?" she smiled. "It is bad enough that Circe is coming. You don't need to make the city vulnerable by sending ships to escort us north. You sent out the gossip that Jamie is here, and everyone is seeing him about. So Tywin won't do anything for now. We have time to wait for the ships from White Harbour to pick us up."
"Not so much now," Ned said and sighed. "Tyrion's letter arrived."
"Oh." She bit her lip for a moment. "When is Jamie leaving?"
"As soon as he's got his supplies," he said. "I still think it's a dangerous gambit."
Ned grumbled. "We have to gamble sometimes, Ned. You know that." He mumbled something incoherent and she chuckled. "Come on, it's late. Let's get you to bed." Arya rolled her eyes when she saw Adam had still not moved from the place he had been standing at for 2 days now. "Is he still brooding?" she asked, causing him to roll his eyes.
"Not minding in the least that I am being indiscreet. Do me a favour and get the reason out of him, little wolf. I'm sure telling you will be one of his great concerns right now."
"Tell me what? That Dany's pregnant? Hooray, it's awesome! And I agree that we should only celebrate when we found her. But why is he locking himself in his chambers like this?"
"I'm not being that indiscreet," Adam said and opened the door.
Frowning, Arya walked inside. Then she raised an eyebrow, even more confused and worried. John was not one to go throwing things around, but the room looked like a terrible mess. The bedclothes were all twisted and pulled and pushed aside. Contents from different trays of food spread. The servant hadn't been allowed to properly collect them. Several cups and empty flagons of wine lying around. John was sprawled out in a corner, snoring loudly, and Ghost had nudged a paw under his head to serve as a pillow. Arya got closer and then scoffed. Seven hells you are drunk," she muttered. John didn't even stir. "It must be really important and serious to have you this out of it, big brother." Patrick timidly stuck his head in from the service door. "Lady Arya, may I tend to Lord Starling?" "Get a tub and the coldest water you can find, Patrick," Arya commanded. "Then some decent, hot food." "Oh, thank the gods. I have several buckets already here. I took them before dawn and kept them out of the sun. They should be cool enough. I'll find Gren to—" "No, fill the tub. And go and see to the food. They spice it up too much here, and Lord Starling hates it. I've got it." The servant nodded, happy to be able to do his job, not daring to ask how Sansa intended to get her brother into the tub. She closed her eyes and nudged Nymeria, who immediately jumped up. "Yes?" She closed her eyes and nudged Nymeria, who immediately jumped up to help. So the girl took her time to tidy up the clothes strewn around for the laundry and rescue Dany's letter, that John seemed to have been clutching strongly for a while. Soon she heard voices in the corridor and opened the door. "What took you so long?" she asked. Gendry had a bewildered look on his face, but then relaxed and rolled his eyes. "I guess Nymeria wasn't dragging me here for no reason, then." "I asked her to. Come on in, the two of you. John needs help into the tub."
"Why can't he go him?"
Adam started, but then cut himself off short.
"Oh, bloody hells, I should have called you sooner. Come on."
Arya paced the corridor in front of John's door as the men helped him undress and get into the tub, chuckling at her brother's grumbled and slurred curses when he finally woke. What seemed like hours later, Gendry opened the door and came out, looking worried.
"I think you should go in. Your brother is dressed and eating now, but he and Adam are quite angry at each other.
She sighed, welcoming the feeling of his arms around her as he pulled her in for a hug. I've never seen him like this. John has his horns of ale, wine and all, but I've never seen him drunk like this, or anything more than a bit relaxed.
I can't even imagine how he must be feeling. It's bad enough that Lady Starling was taken, but now we know she's pregnant. And there's something else going on. They wouldn't speak of it, but it did sound like Lord Starling found out something people felt he was too dumb to know before now.
Arya frowned. Thanks. I'll sort him out now that he's conscious. He kissed her forehead before stepping back. Good luck. With a smile, she went inside the guest chamber. Food delivered, Patrick worked quickly to set the bed to rights and collect the dirty cups and flagons and empty dishes, so the room looked a bit more normal now. You got drunk, she said, coming to the table. John looked down and blushed.
Was too much going on. Davis said tomorrow, so I thought...
John, trust me, if anyone needed to take a moment, it's you. I can't imagine what you must be going through. Danny was kidnapped. Now she's free, but heading into danger, and she is pregnant.
John snorted. I can't hide from this, can I?
He said under his breath, but she got the sense it wasn't to her. What confirmed was when Adam sighed.
You can try. You can try and ignore it. You can try and keep it a secret. But I doubt you'll be able to, the knight said.
John nodded, playing with his food. He still looked terrible, but at least he was clean and not smelling like an armpit in the summer of King's Landing.
I just don't know anything anymore,
he mumbled. All right. Patrick, Uncle Adam, would you please excuse us? I should like to speak to Lord Starling alone. But, my lady, Patrick was shocked. I mean, are you sure it would be appropriate? She threw him a scorching glare. Unless you are suggesting anything inappropriate would happen between me and my lord brother.
Not that anyone would judge me for it anymore,
John murmured, nearly inaudibly. Adam rolled his eyes.
Arya, please, speak some sense into him. I know, the knight sighed. John, I get that you had your whole world turned upside down, and I cannot pretend that I fully understand how you feel. But drinking yourself into a stupor is not going to help you or solve any of your problems. I know that, John exhaled heavily. Last night it seemed like a good idea.
He shrugged. All right, you two, go out now, Arya said, and waited until the door was closed behind them. Well, it's just the two of us, big brother. And then, to her astonishment, John dropped his fork and burrowed his head into his hands as he began to cry so hard his shoulders shook with sobs. Hey, hey, hey! She jumped out of her chair and knelt by him. Come on, big brother. I'm here. Tell me what's wrong, and we can make it less terrible.
It's all a lie, Arya,
he managed in a garbled voice. What is, big brother? She asked softly, but had the opposite effect of what she intended.
Me,
John said after a long time, once his sobs had calmed down a little, holding onto her hand as if it was his lifeline.
I'm a lie, Arya. I don't know who I am anymore. I feel like the world's gone to shit. And suddenly, I don't understand anything anymore.
Arya was very confused. Even when John had been upset with how people treated him, with how her mother treated him, back in what seemed like another lifetime in Winterfell, he had never been this vulnerable. He was broody and sometimes sad, but the man before her now looked lost and alone. You are John Starling.
I'm not. That's not me. That's a lie.
He had stopped crying.
I'm not. That's not me. That's a lie.
He had stopped crying, but he seemed dejected and despondent. Fine. I don't bloody care what you call yourself. I care about the little boy who snuck into the nursery, to give his baby sister a good-night kiss, even when he knew her mother hated him, and if she caught him, he would suffer severe consequences. I care about the boy who ruffled my hair and said I was great, even when everybody told me I wasn't behaving properly. I care about the boy who gave up the little of his free time to play sneak me round the stables to teach me how to ride astride. Even when he knew he shouldn't. When Father caught us, he took full responsibility, even when thinking it'd get him in trouble. I care about the young man who gave me a sword, because he knew it was what I wanted, when everyone else was telling me to pick up my sewing needles and watercolours. So, I don't care what revelation you had, what lie you suddenly think you are, because all that I just said is true. So unless you've gone into a killing spree and murdered a bunch of children, I'm pretty sure we can figure this out, big brother. We can fix this. John smiled sadly and squeezed her hand.
I'm not, he said softly.
You're not what? A murderer? I know that. It was a joke.
No, I meant...
He sighed heavily, and she understood they had arrived at the heart of the problem.
I'm not your brother.
What? She blinked, very confused. I mean, that... John, that's a lie.
It's not.
He went on that low voice that showed how hopeless he was feeling.
Father, he lied. I'm not his son. This bastard.
John laughed sardonically.
I'm not even a bastard. I was haunted by this my whole life. Weighed down and ridiculed for being the one stain in Eddard Stark's honour. And now, I just...
All right, just wait a moment. Arya took a deep breath, trying to organise her thoughts. You're saying Father lied? She asked, and John nodded. Why? Why would he say you're his son?
Because he promised my mother he would protect me. So, you see, I'm not your...
Shut up! She exclaimed. We'll get to how and why and who in a moment. But if you say you're not my brother, I'm going to be very cross. Didn't you hear what I just said, you bloody knucklehead? Do I not care what... I do not care what you call yourself. You said you're not Father's son. Fine. I don't bloody care. You loved and protected and cared for me as a big brother loves and protects and cares for a little sister. So fuck off the rest of the world. You are my brother, and I would very much like to introduce Needle to someone who dares say differently. John began crying again, laughing and sobbing. As he pulled her into a tight hug, Arya was more than happy to reciprocate. Now, she began a long time later, once they had stepped back, tell me everything. From the beginning. John sighed.
Well, it seems it all begins with a fierce she-wolf of Winterfell decided to behave very much against the rules. Just like someone else I know.
He ruffled her hair, and she laughed. Not at all annoyed that he had just ruined her braid.
She avenged a friend's honour, but attracted the ire of a king and the admiration of a prince. And then there was a crowd of winter roses, and a few stupid decisions later, all hells broke loose.
A she-wolf of a crown of winter roses? You mean Aunt Lyanna? Arya asked.
My mother, John revealed.
That's why Father wouldn't tell you her name. Because... Oh, Aunt Lyanna, who was stolen by
Rhaegar Targaryen. John finished the thought. They got married, and here I am.
Married? She checked, and he nodded. A moment later it dawned on her. You're not a bastard. You're a true-born son of Rhaegar Targaryen. Bloody hells, you're the rightful heir to the Iron Throne.
So it seems, John muttered.
I think I need a drink now, Arya said, overwhelmed.
John chuckled. Pretty sure Adam confiscated all the wine from the room.
Oh, she smiled. You have your own Kingsguard, big brother.
John only rolled his eyes.
Ned stood on the balcony of the small council chambers, looking down at the Red Keep's main courtyard just below him. Their meeting was just about to start, but he couldn't help himself. I don't know whether or not it was on purpose, Renly said, coming to stand next to him, but I do thank you for having an excuse not to be down there. Ned smiled.
How could I ever have predicted the time of her arrival, Renly? She didn't inform us about it.
Well thought, Renly said, amused, as they watched Cersei climb down from her carriage. It really is no small wonder that her monstrosity of a wheelhouse had to stay outside the city gates. It would never fit through the streets.
Something she has always known, Ned said, and something that does concern me.
Ned, I doubt she would be hiding a trebuchet in there. I'm not saying Tywin may not very well be bringing his army behind her, but I think we don't have to worry about what the Queen brought us.
I hope so. Many deadly things can fit in very small packages.
Well, Cersei is the sort to use poisons, Renly said. Do you know whether or not Robert will receive her?
Robert tends to be unpredictable, Ned answered.
The king had been furious when he was told of her impending arrival, but the two of them had never quite mended their friendship after Joffrey's trial. Ned wasn't sure if there was a way to.
But if he had wanted to, he would have sent men to return her away.
Then it begs the question, what does my brother want to throw on her face?
Knowing those two, nothing good.
The thought didn't please Ned one bit. And that both worried and soothed the Northerner. With Cersei in town, in the Red Keep, obviously the wildfire wouldn't be used, which gave them the last few days for the Northern fleet to arrive and pick up Ella and the children. Ned only needed to make sure Cersei stayed that long, because if she had come into the city due to the gossip they had spread about Jaime being there, she would be gone as soon as she couldn't find him. And then the other members of the small council, minus Willis, arrived and their meeting begun. Hours later, he couldn't get away fast enough, going to the Tower of the Hand as fast as he possibly could.
Gods, what now?
He groaned when he found his beautiful wife pacing their sitting room, an air of worry between her creased brows. I got a letter from my brother, she said.
Did they find Daenerys? Wait, why are you so worried?
Ella sighed and only passed him the folded parchment.
My beloved sister, I have bad news and good news. And some news that are good, but I'm certain your husband will hate them. We arrived in Volantis this morning, and were met on the harbour by a red priest inviting us into the Red Temple, where the High Priestess held a message from Queen Daenerys. His words, not mine. John went there immediately, where we learnt she got free from her captors, and, thank heavens, both she and the child she carries are well. She is pregnant? Ned asked. And she is free. This is wonderful.
Just keep reading, love, Ella said, frowning. Ned looked back at the letter.
However, in her plan to get free, the kidnappers took her handmaiden Dorea, the Archmaester Marwyn, and the dragon eggs. So instead of waiting for us to come to her or sailing back to safety, she went after them, Ned concluded before he was even reading it. He knew his daughter well enough. What was she thinking? Didn't she think about the baby?
Well, she is a bit reckless. I have to give you that, Ella sighed. Just keep reading, Ned.
Safety. She said she would follow the kidnappers to where they were hired. Marine, in Slaver's Bay, where we were surprised to discover Viserys Targaryen expects her. I believe that Viserys is working with the slavers in the city. How else would he have gotten the gold to hire sellswords? And that can only mean that if the slavers are funding him, and he and his sister had brought to him, I believe he hopes to wed her and stake his claim upon the Iron Throne. The slavers would have agreed if Viserys promised them slavery in Westeros. Imagine the profit margins. But that is not all that happened. The High Priestess touched Jon when he went to thank her for the hospitality of the Red Temple. And you know Red Priests can sense power in a person, especially when said power comes from fire. She gave Jon a potion to speak with the spirit of a dead person, and I doubt it will be hard to imagine who he wanted to talk to. Please do tell your husband I told him so. Jon should have heard it from him, but at least he heard it from his mother. I tried telling Jon that Ned Stark will always be his father, what I do not think Ned will believe, but I did. However, Jon did not take the news well. You know he likes to brood, and he had 2 fathers to inherit it from, so he had asked to be alone and has stayed locked up in his guest chambers all day long. I must say, while I do like that the truth is revealed, I think this was not a good moment for it. Jon was already shaken about Daenerys' pregnancy, and she left a letter, so it all piled out. But he will be all right, if for no other reason that Arya will kick him into being all right. So, for that reason alone, it is good she stowed away. Ned looked up, arms falling down, as his strength failed to hold them up. Jon knows.
I'm sorry, love, Ella said softly, coming closer and taking his hands in hers. I know you wanted to be the one to tell him.
He shouldn't have found out like this. Halfway across the world, his wife rushing into danger with their child in her belly. I had to be there for him, to tell him. Shh.
Shh. I know, Ned, I know, Ella said, seeing the pain in his eyes. To tell him that he is your son, no matter what.
He is, Ned mumbled. My son, no matter what. I need to tell him that. I need him to understand.
I know it's not ideal, but write him a letter, Ella suggested. Tell him that he is your son, and that you can speak more once you've met. But don't let it fester. Ned nodded, and Ella felt her heart break at the pain and agony she saw on his face. Tyrion smiled widely once he finally climbed down from the carriage. His legs were stiff from all the time travelling, but finally they had arrived. I presume I have to go ahead and get some rooms, Bronn said. Bronn, my dear friend, I'm your pet god, it seems, not your friend. The man grumbled. You're paid handsomely to be my pet god, Tyrion returned, and you have been nagging me for a very long time about the idleness of the peaceful quietude of the Midnight Fortress. And now that we are out in the world, you're complaining as well. Do I get rooms or not? Tyrion chuckled. Yes, Bronn, please do go and get us some rooms. And then proceed to go right ahead to the brothel. And you are not coming? I will be anxiously expecting my brother, if he hasn't arrived yet. So the dwarf went inside the Crossroads Inn, glad for the chance to warm up inside. The 4 Starling guards with him seemed eager for a night inside rather than around a campfire, and Tyrion did not blame them. He knew it was only autumn, and it was certainly warmer here in the Riverlands than up in the north. But there was a very chilly wind today. He smiled as he looked around. Jaime was already there, grumpily staring at his cup as he sat on the table in the back corner. Brother! Tyrion greeted as he climbed onto the bench. Jaime sighed, but then smiled. Brother, I thought you had given up this climb. Cersei's madness is not powerful enough to erase it from my mind, the dwarf said, signalling the innkeeper over and nearly missing Jaime's frown. What? She never told you why I left home? Father said. Tyrion snorted. I knew they'd lie, so I'm not exactly surprised. They would have known you wouldn't take kindly to it. They said you had betrayed the family, the knight said, that you went to the Starlings to plot against us. I'll let you decide now whether you believe that or not. Jaime sighed. I've always known there was more to the story. You got to the Blessed Island just as Daenerys Starling was nearly killed. I always assumed they had been involved somehow and you didn't approve of the idea. Tyrion raised an eyebrow. That's nearly accurate. It's been a few years, but I'm sure you heard Robb Stark was attacked as well at the time?
Jamie closed his eyes and exhaled. I was hoping it was an odd coincidence.
I'm afraid Father and our dear sister were angry with Ned Stark and Jon Starling. I voiced the opinion that such acts could end up being too dangerous. Father begrudgingly agreed it would be worth thinking about it better, but Cersei was never one to think too deeply about consequences. And when I argued with her, Tyrion sighed, it was stay and die or leave. I don't regret that decision. There was a time I would die for House Lannister, but not like that. Not because of Cersei's illusions of grandeur.
Jamie swallowed. He had been making excuses for too long. He was tired of making excuses. Ever since, as terrible as it sounded, ever since Joffrey's death, ever since he had gone to Dragonstone with Tommen and Myrcella, Jamie found himself questioning more and more his choices and what had led him to them. Myrcella was so pure. She reminded him of what Cersei could be, what she had been once, the Cersei he had fallen in love with, before she became so blinded by her ambition, by her eagerness to be queen, that she cared about little else. The whole plot to turn him into a Kingsguard. Did she truly love him that much? He was tired of making the same questions round and around in his head. Also, he had always known Cersei and Tyrion didn't get along. Jamie knew that, if he asked his sister, she would act offended and say, "Of course not! I'm a Lannister." But after her latest plans, that pathetic idea to have Joffrey rape Daenerys. Cersei wanted what Cersei wanted. Jamie had been deeply saddened to realise. But this? Threatening Tyrion? Their brother, their own flesh and blood, just for the sake of vengeance. This had no excuse. He wouldn't even try. Then he exhaled. What do you want, Tyrion? Why after 3 years you decide to send a letter asking to meet midway, and then revive this? Because Father and Cersei are trying to be funny again. Jamie heard in his tone that his brother wasn't fishing for information. He was certain of it. I know, he confessed, exhaling heavily, as if the truth weighed a ton on his back. Once Ned Stark let slip that there were rumours of Cersei in town, I investigated and heard she was coming to the capital.
You mean they didn't tell you beforehand?
Tyrion was actually shocked. I was living in Dragonstone, and the foolish maester there is a staunch defender and supporter of Stannis. He wouldn't betray him. If Father made his inquiries, and he always does, he would know that, so he wouldn't risk sending me any messages at Dragonstone. But once I was in King's Landing, I had Pycelle run interference. They won't tell me what, but I do know they're plotting something. I don't actually think they would have sent men after Daenerys, if that's why you're here.
Well, actually, I believe you.
It looked like a careless job, and that is not Father's style. But, Jamie, you might not know what exactly, but you're not stupid enough not to have even an inkling. Tyrion said, and Jamie looked away. Tommen is old enough to be secured as king, brother. You know they've been itching for that for years, and they must have cursed heavily once Joffrey fell. They won't wait any longer. The Kingsguard exhaled. What do you want from me? Jamie, they know. They know about you and Cersei. They know about the children's paternity. They've known for years. Even before that thing at Robb Stark's wedding. He recoiled, panicking. No, they wouldn't. They can't know. Why would they? Because Ned Stark may have his flaws, but he wouldn't want their deaths on his conscience. He knew Robert would believe him. He wasn't worried about proof. But he also knew Robert would call for all of your heads. Not even fleeing to Casterly Rock would save you. There would be a bloody war. So, what? Jamie, think. If Cersei and Father kill Robert to install Tommen,
Then who do you think people would rather believe? A nearly disgraced queen who was shown to be a shitty mother with a weak boy would-be king, or Ned Stark, Robert's best friend, who is known for his fucking honesty and honour and would never dishonour himself like that?
People would rather the illusion of a succession than another bloody...
Rhaegar left a son. Tyrion whipped out his coup de grace.
What?
Rhaegar left a surviving son.
Where? Who?
Can't trust you with that much yet, Tyrion said, then took a long swig of wine. He took a deep breath and exhaled heavily. There is a war coming, brother. Father and Cersei are about to start it. But you know what people think of our family. More than that, about Cersei. Jaime was still reeling, his thoughts in a whirlwind.
Why did no one ever... But... the mountain! How did he survive?
Tyrion sighed. His brother was not stupid. He had been in the Red Keep. He would have seen at least the aftermath of the mountain's encounter with Elia Martell and her children. Therefore, the logical conclusion that said son had been outside the capital during the sack. And just who was Rhaegar Targaryen hiding away with? He pulled out the envelope from his breast pocket, and Jaime opened with trembling fingers.
A man must always make his choices. What is yours? Sir Arthur Dayne, Kingsguard to the true king of the Seven Kingdoms.
Jaime felt his blood run cold. The seal was the same. The seal he would never forget. The message was simple and straightforward. Rather than a long-winded explanation about the advantages and honour in siding with Rhaegar's son. This was Sir Arthur's style. Say one sentence and communicate a whole lesson. And it was dated only weeks ago. The time around when Tyrion would have been preparing to leave the Midnight Fortress. He remembered the message in his room years ago. But he had always thought he'd imagined it.
There is always room for improvement. He's alive?
Jaime asked, and Tyrion only nodded.
Where is he?
At this precise moment, no idea. But I know he is in Essos, he answered. Obviously, there was no need to explain that he was in Essos with Rhaegar's son looking for Daenerys. Jaime barely heard him, his mind putting all the pieces together, because the story that had been told was that Arthur Dayne had been in the south, with Oswald Went and Gerald Hightower, guarding
Lyanna Stark,
he whispered, looking up to his brother, seeing Tyrion clench his jaw. And then the last pieces fell into place. How, in all of the 7 hells, had no one made the connection? Why had... It was so obvious. How had Ned Stark, one of the shittiest lies in the 7 Kingdoms, pulled it off?
John Starling,
Jaime said in the lowest whisper he could manage. Glad for the raucous in the tavern.
He's never been Ned Stark's bastard. He's Rhaegar's.
Tyrion smiled. About that. How well did he know our late prince? Jaime thought back to the day Rhaegar had left the Red Keep to lead the troops to the Trident.
I am leaving half of my family under your watch, Sir Jaime,
the Prince of Dragonstone had said.
Half his family. Wait, he married her?
And Robert ironically betrothed John Starling to...
Fucking hells,
Jaime exclaimed and then cussed even more under his breath, sitting back on the bench trying to wrap his head around the revelation.
You already have everything you need for bloody restoration, Tyrion. They have the right bloodline, 3 children, 2 of them sons, to show for a secure dynasty. And it won't be hard to prove they have the wrong name right now. They have the love of the people. Why do you need me?
The dwarf smiled. Because you've never forgiven yourself for failing Rhaegar, brother. Don't fail him now. Jaime blinked tears away. But Tyrion only stood up, taking his tankard with him. I'll leave you to process it, brother. Come and find me when you're ready. Catelyn watched the two men speak, feeling anger fill her and grow. Here they were, enjoying their brotherly bond and their wine and their food, uncaring about all the misery and pain they spread. She remembered all too well the weeks and weeks of terror she had experienced just after Bran had been thrown off that tower, unsure whether or not her precious boy would ever wake up again. And then he did wake, but he was crippled. Crippled and nearly killed by an assassin sent to finish the job the Fall hadn't done. She remembered what Peter had told her a few moonturns after her arrival at the Sept of Baelor, that he had tracked down the assassin, the one who had had the dagger she had described to him. Tyrion Lannister, the imp, the little monster, and the proud lion Sir Jaime, probably plotting whose son they would attack next on their way to the lion's den. Ned was too weak, not having acted yet. But what could she do? The great and honourable and revered Lord Eddard Stark had exiled her from Winterfell due to the hurt feelings of a nobody bastard and his fallen princess wife. A princess with royal blood that should have been Rob's wife, not the bastard's. Why had Ned done that? Given up the chance for royal grandchildren? Just that simple? Instead, he had married Rob off to the Reach, the posh and pompous Reach, and Sansa, her beautiful and sweet girl, sent off to the savage Dornish and their perverted ways. Bran, promised off to the lowly Reeds, and Arya was wilder than ever, truly believing she could behave like a boy. Her poor misguided daughter, and she couldn't say anything else. After her exile from Winterfell, her Lord Father had been sure she would never be able to regain her position. As such, Hoster wouldn't be saddled with a disgraced daughter as an extra expense, so he'd shipped her off to the Sept, and like that, Catelyn had lost everything. And her children. Her poor children, neglected and misguided. All of this had happened because Ned had married the whore, who was simply too busy sprouting new bastard half-bloods to have the time to care for Ned's real children. But no more. Catelyn decided. She had been locked up in the Sept for years, unable to do anything. Finally believing she had grown used to her new situation, the High Septon had assigned Scepter Catelyn to her very own place, taking care of the Septon children of a nobody lord from the Vale. She had wanted to cry. She hadn't even recognised the house, which meant they were either new or irrelevant, or both. But the dutiful Scepter Catelyn had departed King's Landing at the High Septon's order to fulfil her role. Their party had stopped at the Crossroads Inn for a night, and here she was, hidden in the shadows, enjoying a pure glass of wine, like she hadn't ever since Rob's wedding, and watching the murderous brothers. This was her chance to act, her one chance to do something for her family before she was once more locked up for another fortified building. That is, if a minor house from the Vale could afford any sort of fortification. She looked around the tavern again. She recognised several, almost all of the banners. There were 4 Starling Guards. What were they even doing there? Riverlanders, men of the Vale. That could work. Oddly enough, there were no red cloaks. But that was even better. The proud lions thought they were so unreachable, they didn't need an escort. She could call the knights from the Riverlands, call them on her father's name, to bring to justice the would-be murders of their liege grandsons. The men from the Vale would help, since she was their liege's aunt. It would be all for naught, though, if anyone here rushed back to tell Tywin Lannister. He would send his men straight to Riverrun. So that's where Catelyn couldn't go. Call them on their loyalty to House Tully, but not go home. Only say as much. The path north was also blocked. Peter had told her the whore's firstborn had been made the Lord of Moat Cailin, and as such there was construction in the castle. Whoever was in charge of it, perhaps Benjen, as that seemed to be what he amounted to in life, to oversee construction for bastards' castles, wouldn't let her through. They would keep her and her prisoners there until Ned told them what to do. Going south to King's Landing would be equally useless. Robert Baratheon, the pathetic buffoon, would simply let them go because they were his good brothers. She couldn't go west, north, nor south. Therefore, she was left with the east. The Vale. Lysa would receive her, and Peter would be there. He had written that Lysa had been so fragile when he arrived, the Lord's declarants were going to seize the Eyrie from her and send her back to Riverrun. They had apparently already taken little Robin, and they knew what Hoster would do to an exiled daughter. So Peter had done the altruistic thing. He had married Lysa to protect her and keep her with her son. Catelyn knew they couldn't have found a better friend than Peter, so devoted to them and their happiness. She downed the rest of her wine, taking a deep breath. These knights would answer her plight, surely. And then she could bring these murderers to face trial, and Bran would be avenged. Oh, perhaps the children would finally be convinced that she had only had their best interests at heart. She couldn't wait. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this one. I love that bit with Arya snapping back at Jon being like, I don't care whose bloodline you have, you're my brother, snap out of it. And that bit with Tyrion, knowing that Jaime's not as dumb as people think he is, and helping him nudge along the pieces until he figured it out. Nice. And Catelyn flippin' Tully. You lady are Delulu and you think that you're the Solulu. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and albino pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.